Okay, hello everyone. This is Care of Academy, and my name is Josh, one of the marketing team. Today, we would like to continue to our second episode of the Ballet Podcast with Mr. Dirk Badenhorst. He is the CEO of the South African International Ballet Competition, and we'll bring him in with Mr. Du. Thank you so much for participating.
Hello, Dirk. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yourself?
I doing really wonderful. I am very happy to see you. Grateful for the technology. Last week, as you know, that we interviewed Sipting Weber from Hong Kong. I'm in Washington, and this week I'm just so excited to have you join us from Johannesburg, South Africa. And really, it's the technology brings everybody together. I am so grateful to have you on this second episode of the podcast from Kirov Academy. And I want to introduce you to our audience. And I was thinking how we can do a brief interview, but in the way that truly describe who you are. And of course, we're gonna elaborate of all the wonderful things that you have been doing and you are doing right now. And I am thinking about there's three things about you. It's like three roles in the ballet. You dance the Romeo, you dance Thibaut, and you dance uh, another role. Like three roles in you that which is I think is just fantastic. It's just amazing. First, of course, you are the jury member of international ballet competition. I have seen you all over the world judging and bring everybody together in the dance community. And you're founder and CEO of South African International Ballet Competition. We're going to get into that a little bit later on. So that's first your role. And the second role, I'm thinking that to me, it's very important that you are a ballet educator, a promoter, and a director. So not only, let's say people think of a ballet educator, the world think it's a teacher. Like I consider myself a teacher and teaching ballet classes, coaching, and bring ballet on stage and that the type of activity that we normally associate to an educator. But you are in different level. You are bring educators together. You bring educators from one location to influence the other in the international level. This is actually how we met. Dirk, for everybody you don't know, I was invited by Dirk to participate a international ballet intensive last summer. This is when the second time I went to South Africa, but the first time was as a dancer with the Washington Ballet. The second time was as a teacher. And so he brings teachers, move them from one region to the other. With them, those teachers brought their knowledge from their different background and their different approach to South Africa. So the students there can have a chance to be influenced, to be taught from teachers from all over the world. And Mr. Dirk is going to go over with us a little bit about that, which is I think is absolutely fascinating. And promoter, a ballet lover and also a ballet promoter, using ballet in the way as a tool to create cultural exchange, to bring people together, to bring more understanding of people. Because as we know very well, we enter the ballet studio, let's say a company class, you will see dancers from all over the world, but we're speaking one language, the language of ballet. And instantly, and I experienced this all over my life. I know before the class, we were just don't know each other. We start taking this class, right? We're sort of timid and we're a little nervous. As a teachers, we don't know anybody's background and we start just teaching class. The very first day, Dirk, if you remember, we taught this so-called evaluation class all together, all the teachers that we sort of know each other, but we don't know who we are. But instantly after the class, we became instant friends because we spoke a common language because we're educators. For dancers, I often found that we go to the ballet festival, international, we're taking class with dancers from all over the world. After 90-minute class, we become instant friends because we spoke the same language. And that's really fascinating. You are doing so beautifully in that regard. And also a director. You are the director of ballet, Bazanzi Ballet, which is you found, and which is you bring the company together and you travel. Not only you bring people into South Africa, but you bring South African dancers to the world. So there's exchange, it's a two-way exchange. And you're gonna tell us a little bit about that. And then third, which is I think is big role. And I always remember when we were often talked about, and I always said, Dirk, you should be ambassador. You should be the cultural ambassador of South Africa because that's what you're doing. And the first time we met, actually, you were on stage as jury member in 2018 in Shanghai, China, as a jury member of international competition. And the way they introduced you is Mr. Dirk Badenhorst from South Africa. You walk on stage and you didn't have to say anything. It was announced right away in everybody's mind. They put two connections together. The South Africans' presence in the international world in the name of ballet. And as a cultural ambassador, you're doing a fantastic job. Not only go to China, you go to all other parts of Asia, you go to Russia, you go to Europe. Then after this conversation, and 2 months later, I saw you were in Russia representing South Africa to have a arts cultural exchange conference. You were speaking on behalf of the state of art in Africa. So this is, to me, it's really is what you're doing and who you are is really a metaphor of how one ambitious person, inspiring person, can use the art of ballet beyond just what I'm doing, which is important too, tendu, fondu, and all that. It's very important too. But using it as a tool to bring dancers together, to bring culture together, bring countries together. So that extent version of what ballet can do, it's truly, truly remarkable and inspiring. So Dirk, I'm just gonna go ahead. I have some subjects right here and I prepared just to reinforce what we just talked about. And I'm sure you are going to bring up, please feel free to bring up anything extra that I was forgotten. Now, first, Dirk, I wanna ask you, how do you see international competition can help dancers grow and bring the communities together? And what are the things SAIBC, South African International Ballet Company, is doing that are different in terms of promotion and education? Mr. Dirk, can you elaborate with that a little bit with us?
I can, and thank you very much again for having me. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. And as you have said, you know, ballet for me has become a tool to bring us all together. It has become something so special that we have to understand that we are all part of the same community. We might come from different countries, different schools of training. We might have special preferences or different preferences, but ultimately we are all trying to make ballet bigger, better, and stronger globally. And I think that for me is so important. In South Africa, we have the beautiful Royal Academy of Dance, we have Chaketi, we have the Dance Association of South Africa. Recently, I started having the Cuban methodology for the last 3 or 4 years in South Africa. But it's not that the one is better than the other. it's like I always say to people, it's like having to go and choose your psychologist or your ballet teacher. You have to find what works for you, what makes ballet click for you and tick for you. And also, you have to look so carefully at what your audience is enjoying as well. And I think that's a very important aspect of all of these things. So I went to China in 2007 to the Shanghai competition. And that was the first time I finalized the idea of hosting the South African International Ballet Competition in South Africa. And there was a wonderful lady, Hae Kim from South Korea, who immediately said she would be one of the supporters of this competition. And she really has been. From the very, very first competition, she had done that. And she had to do something that I didn't understand at that moment, how hard it was to get her to convince the parents from South Korea to send their kids to South Africa. So, and then they came, and since then it has been wonderful to go to South Korea, because every time I go, I see young kids that have been to the competition and who had moved on to become dancers in the Universal Ballet and the National Ballet and in many companies around the world. So that's what ballet does, and that's really, I think, also why I wanted the competition to come to South Africa. And I think that is the value of competitions. It isn't about the tricks that the kids can do at the competitions. It isn't about, in the end, really who wins the competition. It's about the opportunities it creates. And I think for me, what makes the South African International Ballet Competition so special is the fact that we really try, for the week that all the dancers are in the beautiful city of Cape Town, they are creating a big family. Of course, there is the will to win. Of course, there's competition going on, but they have a week to get to know one another, to help one another, to learn from one another. And I always go backstage, and I always say to the kids when they are sitting backstage that the competition is not about what happens on the stage. It's what happens behind the stage. Many of the teachers that you will meet there will much quicker become directors of schools or even companies in the future. Many of the young dancers will become principal dancers later, and then artistic directors in the future. So it's an incredible network that you build. And I think that is really what I try to do so much of, is the networking capability of all the kids participating. And most of them go away and come back later with, and I see them at other competitions, and when I travel the world in companies, and they all come and say, "Hi, Mr. Badenhorst, how are you? So great to see you, so great to catch up with you." And that, for me, is what's so important. Many kids get access to scholarships to schools. Many kids get positions in companies. There's a beautiful dancer at Dutch National that was selected to go to Dutch National, first the junior company by Ernst Meissner, who was one of my jury members in 2014, and then she moved up in the company. And that's what it's about for me. It's about bringing the beautiful directors of schools and companies together, and they inform the future of ballet. They sit together and they discuss not just the actual dancer. They discuss what happens in the different companies. They discuss what happens stylistically, what happens in the science of training ballet dancers. And that's very important for me, because training a ballet dancer isn't just a hobby. It truly has become a science. And it took me many, many years to understand, and literally to cut myself in half, to understand that some teachers are teachers to keep kids busy and off the street, and that's 100% fine. And many of those kids will become future audience members and supporters of the ballet, and hopefully also funders of the ballet. But then there's the other half, the half that is about training the vocational dancer, the superstar that you will see on the stage. And the superstar isn't only the principal dancer. A superstar is any dancer that lands up in a professional company, because they all have to work together to tell the story of Swan Lake or Don Q or Giselle or whatever it is that you are going to watch. And so often we think of the ballet dancer that is the principal dancer as the superstar, and it's not true. It's a real combination of everybody coming together. And I think that is the value of any ballet competition in the world. It gives you the opportunity as a dancer to make friends and to compare yourself to what's happening in the world. As teachers, to see what happens in the world of training around the world. And it's really beautiful. I've had Ramona de Sa, the director of the National Ballet School of Cuba, sit and chat to Hei-Shik Kim, and they were exchanging training methodologies, and it was cross-informing. So a lot of the people think it's only about what's happening on the stage, and as I said before, it's not. There are so many different layers to a competition, and that is what's so beautiful. And many directors get together and discuss, and I know that in Beijing, I was on the jury the first time, the first South African in 2013, and 2011 I was just a guest. And in Shanghai, a lot of work happens behind the scenes about creating networks of new ballets that are being put together, of making the connections, of bringing the guest teachers to come and teach for you. As you had mentioned, I met you in Shanghai in 2018, and then I brought you last year to South Africa, and I'm very happy to see that you're wearing my beautiful shirt for the South African International Ballet Competition Intensive that we hosted. And it's that kind of networking that is so important. It's so important for us as a country that is so isolated from the world. And again, I have to say thank you to all the ballet teachers that are doing so much in South Africa to try and to create dancers for the future. And you have become, after the competition in the intensive in South Africa, you've become quite famous. So many people really loved what you were doing, and you introduced them to the Vaganova style of training, to what happens at the Kirov school. You spoke so well of the school. And that is really what it's about for me. And then you spoke of the ambassadorial role that I might have fulfilled, but it's not just me, it's every single dancer that travels to a different place, whether it's a different city, a different school, a different country, a different continent. Every single one of those dancers is taking a bit of where they come from to where they are going. And for me, that is what is so very, very important. We learn so much. When we see somebody dance, we know so much more about those people, who they are, what they are. And sometimes we don't really know of what they had to go through to get there. But that we learn very, 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 very well. And we try very hard to foster that. So in South Africa, you asked also what makes the competition different is the fact that we try so hard to bring kids from different communities to the theater. Sometimes they are not ready to actually participate in the competition, but we bring them to watch. We take them to meet the dancers. We get them to do class with some of the teachers that we have there. And that is really, again, what we are trying to do to make ballet more accessible. So since 2016, I have been working with the Ministry of Culture in Cuba and the Embassy of Cuba in South Africa to bring Cuban teachers, with the kind permission of the National Ballet School of Cuba, to start training young Black teachers in the townships and some teachers in South Africa in the Cuban methodology. Again, not saying the one methodology is better than the other, just introducing something different. And again, that's what's important about the competitions, because we all have something that makes us special, and yet in the end we want to put everybody in the same box. And we have to understand that every dancer comes from a different school that speaks to a different audience, that has a different kind of sensitivity and a different kind of sensibility to their dancer. So you can't really compare a Kirov in Washington to a a dancer from the National Ballet School of Cuba, or a dancer from the Paris Opera, or the Royal Ballet, or the Dutch National Ballet School, because they were trained differently. And they were trained differently because they are trained to perform where they are at. But in the end, there is good training and bad training. And so that is really what we are having to look for. First and foremost, when the dancer walks on stage, the question is, have they been trained well? Let's forget at first about the style. Let's forget about the costume. Let's forget about anything else. First, just look at whether the training was good. Then you can start look at all the other things. But I always say that if a dancer was really well trained, the body, the physical instrument really well trained, then any director can take that well-trained body and shape him or her into exactly what works for that particular company. And that in the end is what makes a good dancer good. Is the fact that they have to be versatile to be able to do today Jerome Robbins ballet, tomorrow a Balanchine ballet, the next day Runchao-Du ballet, or whoever ballet it is that they are wanting to dance, and the style of that particular company. So that's really, I think, in short, which was not so short, why I do what I do and what makes the ballet competition in South Africa different from the others, and the question as to what it is that I look at or what I look for when I adjudicate on international stages.
Absolutely. And I think taken away, Mr. Dirk, that the most important for a young audience, the students, it is a networking. It's a tremendous networking opportunity. And I feel like I'm echoing what you said is so beautifully, is that not only you wish to be placed well, of course, you go to competition, you want to win, but it's the tremendous opportunity behind it, this networking opportunity for jury member to see you, let's say as a junior level, but the next 2 years later, they see you at a senior level. That kind of emotional, personal connection is already there. And most of the jury members are director of companies, and the teachers who brought students travel internationally are well-known teachers. And so this, I almost feel like it's a conference in multi-levels, not only for the students, competition, the dancers, the students, but teachers and the directors, all levels of almost like a conference together. And so for that, and I really believe that young dancers can benefit so much from it. Thank you for articulating that. This is something that I've been trying to tell people the same. A lot of students and parents ask me, should we do the competition? What's the competition? It's much more than just compete for that 90 seconds or a minute or two on stage, but because you are creating a presence, you're creating a dialogue on stage with so many people that are going to be so important for you and later on in your career. That's so fantastic. We're going to talk about the South African dance education in a little bit, and I think I have a question, a couple other elements about that later on. But I want to talk about this is a specific question. What do you think the young dance students should be doing if they have lack of access to quality dance education and exposure? Now, this is not just a South African question. No, this is a global question, truly global question. So as a person who has so much experience in that regard, what I just talked about, for the students who does not have quality access, I'm talking about access to good teacher. I'm talking about access to good studio. I'm talking about access to just a safe environment, okay, to study ballet. That what is the experience, what they should do, and what are you doing in helping that aspect in South Africa, and what's your advice globally, please?
Well, I think first and foremost, with this whole coronavirus, there was a beautiful story on Facebook at one stage that says we are all in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. And I think that applies to so many levels of our lives, because, you know, you can have no access to great training, but you might have enough money to get a flight to travel, or a taxi or a car, or the opportunity to go to a place where you have it. Then you might have all the talent in the world, but you have absolutely no funding to get you anywhere. And we have a lot of that in South Africa, sadly. And so, for instance, what we do is we try and create as many opportunities. And we did, for instance, the intensive in South Africa last year. Many schools have their winter or summer or autumn schools, where they invite kids from outlying areas, and they also then offer scholarships. You have in your school the young, beautiful Mateo dancing with you from South Africa. That is possible. But for the child that I think first and foremost is sitting where they are, with many of these summer schools that happen, they are offering scholarships, and they are trying to make it as accessible as possible to many kids. With the intensive I hosted in Johannesburg last year, we had kids from all 9 South African provinces there. Some had to endure very hard times to be able to get there, but they did. And it's that inspiration that they then take back with them, that exposure to great teaching, that they can take back to their fellow dancers and their fellow teachers. But also what the COVID-19 has taught us is that we can do what we are doing right now. At least we can start using technology to start connecting. So, you know, I literally daily open my Facebook, and there are messages from young dancers saying, how can you help? And I always try and find teachers in their area that I can refer them to, that is as close as possible, that could then hopefully teach them. And that happens anywhere in the world. You could really literally do that anywhere in the world. So that's what we try and do. And we try and create as many opportunities. We try and allow scholarship kids and bursary kids to join different schools. The one very important message I think that is so important now in this time of technology, where so many people are accessing classes online. It's great that there are all these classes. And the question that each dancer or teacher or parent should ask is this appropriate level for my child? Is this the right class for my child, or should I find another class that is at the right level? Because if you don't do the right level training, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to train yourself badly, you're going to do things that are sadly not good for you. But all of those presupposes a certain level of knowledge, a certain level of understanding that not everybody has. And you know, I always think of Li Xingxin, the Mao's last dancer. How wonderful would it have been if we all had that capability that China had 50, 60 years ago, or 40 years ago, to go and travel throughout the whole country and to try and find all those very, very talented kids. Not wait for them to come to you. Even when oftentimes we do audition tours, we are still kind of relying on kids to come to you. We still kind of relying on the suggestion or the thought that the community knows about it and can therefore come and do it. We forget that there are so many kids that have never even heard of what ballet is in very, very remote parts of South Africa, of many other countries. I'm not talking about the European countries. I think it's very rare that in Europe you will find people not knowing what ballet is, but it's particularly in the third world countries, the poorer countries, where there is such talent, absolutely such beautiful talent. And I think it's our task as ballet professionals to try and find them. So in Washington, ballet is Andile Ndlovu, who Septim spotted at the 2008 International Ballet Competition in South Africa, and offered him and the young dancer Boise Dikobe positions in the summer school, and then they grew into the company. And what is beautiful about Andile and Boise is that they come back to South Africa and they teach and they inspire and they take part in productions, and they allow television time to really give back and to really re-inspire young South Africans. And I think that is what is so important. That is what we need so much more of. And we often think, we often think that if we've done it once, it's enough. It's never enough. You know, when I talk about my development programs in South Africa, and make no mistake, I'm not the only person in South Africa that runs development programs. There are very beautiful development programs from Zama, from the different schools, really, really beautiful. And we talk about it, but what we forget is that we keep on talking in the same circles, and we are not moving out of our own spheres of influence. And we have to try and break that. We have to find the other influencers that can help us reach those other children, that can inspire those other children. You know, I was having an interview with a lady called Clara from Nigeria the other day, and she was talking about how do we inspire young boys in the beginning to do ballet? And I said, in the beginning, don't wait for them to come to you as well. Go to the soccer club or the cricket club or the tennis club and go and teach movement to those young boys. Get them to experience the value of what ballet can do for them. Don't even call it ballet in the beginning, because ballet in so many ways has such a negative stigma. And in some ways, let's get past that at first. Also, for the young boys, don't put them in tights in day one. Some of the boys are quite fine with it, but some of the boys would rather die than put a pair of tights. So play in the beginning to the interests of those young kids that you are wanting to have an impact, and get them to become the change agents for you. Because once they start talking, and when they start beating their opponents in the soccer, and they go, but hang on, why are you suddenly beating us? Oh, you're doing this thing called ballet. Let's also start doing it. And that's when you will then start finding more and more and more and more young ballet dancers. But in the end, a lot of funding is required. And again, that's why the Chinese model for the last 40, 50, 60 years have been so incredible, because it has been so incredibly well funded. You know, the Shanghai International Ballet Competition has one of the biggest prize monies per competition right now. Beijing tries to do the same. Many other competitions don't have that kind of funding. Many other companies and schools don't have that kind of funding. And we have to make do in other ways. And we have to try and find that talent and create the opportunities for the youngsters that are out there to get to your schools. And again, that's why somebody like yourself and many of the directors of the other schools are doing such great jobs, going around, seeing the talent, spotting it, and then bringing it together. Ballet is a very expensive art form. We all know that. Yeah. And so also you don't want to, and it's a harsh word, you don't want to waste the resources, time, money, talent on somebody that it really isn't going to make it. And so somebody that's not going to make it isn't necessarily the most talented or untalented kid. Oftentimes you have somebody with all the facility and all the talent in the world that still doesn't make it. So the job of the director is so important in being able to look through what they are seeing physically in front of them, but being able to look into the heart and into the mind and soul of that little person in front of you when you give them the opportunity. Do they have that drive? Do they have that passion? And all of those things together is what, in the end, is what we are all striving towards, to create the opportunities.
I agree everything you said, and I think ballet, to be properly conducted in the training process, it has to be a state and private level combination. Because without state at the federal level sponsorship, the private can never compete with that kind of countries with that kind of support. Let's say the country you just talked about, and let's say, for example, Cuba as well, right? And in Cuba, have produced some of the best dancer in the world. I mean, we go to Cuba, we might not see this huge luxury buildings. We might not see they have put, but they're on the pedestal in terms of artists, in terms of respect by the public. And I was absolutely amazed how educated the audience were when we went to Cuba. Every audience member knows the ballet. They know the music. They know when to clap. They know when to not clap. That means the ballet is completely infiltrated into people's lives, and
But the big thing is, that they had the complete 150% support of their former president Fidel Castro for 50, 60 years that he was running the country. The rumor is, for instance, that right in the beginning when he became the president, he approached Alicia and Fernando and Alberto Alonso and said, how much will it cost to build a ballet company? And they did their sums and they gave him an amount of X. And he said, I will give you 2 times X, but you have to build it into one of the best companies in the world. He understood the value of the arts. He understood the value in particular of classical ballet. And a lot of things can be said about the president, but if your president is indeed completely supportive of it, it makes it so much easier for all government departments, firstly, and then secondly, the private sector to support. Because it's very hard for the private sector to support something when the government is completely against it, when the government is not making it easier to support it. So that you're 100% right. It is completely a partnership between the national, local, provincial governments and the private sector, and then of course having the talent and the passion.
Absolutely. And I was also, as a teacher, I always said, our job is to lead, to inspire the students, and to be a role model. But sometimes I found it's the other way around. We need to be inspired by the students that are role model students to keep us ourselves in check. I want to tell the story that just briefly when I was in South Africa last year, just teaching. And we have this boy, this beautiful young teenager boy, and he always had a TV crew, a camera, and a couple of people following him around. And I thought that's probably a young star, and probably is some agenda and then all that. So I didn't really pay attention to it. And but after a week, this technician, the TV crew person that we become known because he was always there, and come to me, he says, Mr. Joe, I hope we're not being intrusive. And he began to tell me a little bit why he was there to film me. This was an ongoing project for many years now to document this child, his life, how dance literally saved his life. And that, when he told me that story, how he was born, how he was introduced to dance, and this is before I started casting him in a very nice role in my piece, because I saw something in him. He was not the most talented legs and feet and everything else in that whole group. However, I felt something, just a natural intuition. That was before I was being told that this tremendous story around this boy. And then I tell myself, you know what, Rin Chao, you have nothing to complain about. We always complain the weather's cold, this and that.
And then we start at 8 o'clock in the morning.
We have something to complain about, right? We always, as a dancer, because as a dancer, we complain. That was like, Rin Chao, you have nothing to complain about. I saw this boy, the spark in his eyes when he's dancing. And after I was told about his story, this TV station is documentary his life, I was like, wow. I mean, talking about the aspect of training stars, right? We have beautiful Andele at the international level. But at the same time, saving lives. I mean, I hate to say it, save life. I have friends that we met in South Africa that having schools in the not very good areas, but they are there to have a studio so the students does not have to travel a long way. I mean, the art form, it's the range of what it does is absolutely tremendous. So I learn and I see and I heard the stories through traveling. This is another thing about this kind of networking. It informs me to be a teacher and a person that who I am now. It's being informed by those many experiences. So
What I always find amazing is that whether you're in Johannesburg or in Soweto, one of our townships, or in Nigeria, or in Cuba, or in Washington, or in Moscow, or in Paris, or in London, how universal the appeal of ballet is. A tiara and a tutu and a point shoe, how it's the dream of every little girl, and how that life-saving is often giving the opportunity to a young kid from a very, very disadvantaged background. But at the same time, how a middle-class kid or a kid from a very, very wealthy background has that passion inside them that without giving credence to it, without being able to make something of it, they will die. And ballet then gives them that spark. I will never forget, in 2004, we took our babies from one of our schools to a hospital where we performed for a group of kids in a cancer ward. And there was one little girl that the nursing staff said that she was going to die. They were completely convinced that she would die in the next 3 to 4 days. And literally while she was watching, there was a little spark that had gone on in her eyes. And I made a point of calling every single week for the next 6 months to see how she was. And she was still alive after 6 months. Something that day, and it wasn't the miracle or magic or nothing. It was just something that sparked something and made her wanting to not give up. And I think that is what is so very, very important. And I think this is what, even in these times of COVID-19, the arts are not seen as an essential job. And so in many places, it's one of the last things that they are allowing. I know that in Germany right now, people are fighting and they are entering their studios at last, and they have to keep social distancing. And yes, there are people that are hungry, and there are people that are going through terrible hardships at the moment, really, really, in countries like ours, but not just like ours, around the world. But we forget the value of being able to lose yourself in beautiful music, in beautiful theater, in beautiful, and I'm not just talking about classical art forms, I'm talking about folkloric art forms, I'm talking about traditional art forms. I think that we forget, and you are so right, that says it's life-changing and life-saving. These art forms, they are really, really important. And for many years, I was like, yeah, I understand that we need to do certain things first, until one day it dawned upon me, and I understood that, no, there is something about the arts that makes the world worth turning. There's always the joke, and I'm not sure if he really said it, but Winston Churchill that said his advisors told him that they should cut, when they were looking to cut money somewhere, they said, let's cut the arts. And he then said, but in that case, what's the point of having a war? If you are fighting, but you don't have the arts left in your own country, there is no reason to. And that, for me, is really such an important thing to remember, that we mustn't give up. We must never give up. And it goes back to that point that you made just now about not having access to great training or to training at all, is that never give up. always try and pursue your passion. Never take no for an answer. We look at some of these amazing companies and these big schools that exist, and we forget that behind that, there was a Mary Day in Washington Ballet's instance that had to fight and push for so many years before it became the one, and then the next and the next. And we forget that in our world, there's the Dirk Badenhorst that people see, but we forget all of the teachers that are watching. And I must say to all the South African teachers that are watching and let me know that they will be watching, thank you very, very much. It is so much appreciated. But we forget that there are many people that are working behind the scenes to make it happen. And as much as the dancer has the passion to dance, the teachers have the passion to dance and to keep dance alive. And that is what is so important. It's about working together and understanding that when you say to a child, go on to another school, it's not saying that teacher isn't good. It's taking the child to another level. It is about creating the next opportunity. So if I go to my concept of the training teachers in the townships, I can't get physically everywhere. And for many years, the companies in South Africa and the schools in South Africa were trying to take a few kids and would bring them somewhere to be trained, but it's not sustainable. It's hugely costly to constantly transport these teachers, these kids. And so that's why 4.5 years ago, I said, let's now start training the teachers who live in those particular townships, who understand the politics and the workings of those townships. Those people that don't have jobs and don't have opportunities, let's start training them to become the teachers. And then that takes care now of tier or level 1, that we can start selecting the best of the best of the best and then bringing those together, but never forgetting or allowing the kids who are living in some of the most undesirable situations and conditions. They must have access down the road to classical ballet. Not only classical ballet, but in my world, classical ballet. And that's what's so important. And that's why it's been so fantastic to be able to then do a second tier. When we did the International Ballet Intensive, when you came last year, with Christoph from Germany, and with Elsa from Latvia, and the 2 Cubans from America. It was then to create the second level of that inspiration. And then I can tell you that a number of those kids have been so inspired that they cannot wait to now land up in a company. You know, when you were doing those boys' classes, it is so hugely important to have classes for those boys to get together, because most of those boys are in their own studio by themselves. And then we create this space where suddenly there's a testosterone rush, there's an energy, there's a I'm going to do 2 parades, you're going to do 3, I'm going to do 4, and it's a healthy competition. And it's been beautiful to see how some of those young dancers have literally moved on to the next level. And it's those opportunities that are so hugely important. And so never give up, never misjudge or not realize the impact of what you are having on many of these kids.
How inspiring, beautiful, absolutely. My third question, Mr. Dirk, is that as an international ballet company jury member, what are the common mistakes? And this is we're getting to little nitty-gritty things. What are the common mistakes you observed from the students, and what is your advice to improve them? I'm talking about when you see a student, clearly that variation is not appropriate. When you see a student, clearly the technical level is beyond him or her at the moment. Can you share with us some of the advice as a jury member? You're sitting there. with some of the biggest names in ballet world. You are having this tremendous career or tremendous background. You're sitting there, you watch this 14-year-old walk on stage, do her a minute and a half variation and then leave. In that 90 seconds, what is that? Sometimes the common mistake you say, "Oh, I wish she could have done a little bit more of that. I wish he could have done less of that." Can you just give us a little bit from your juror member point of view that some of the tips that we can avoid and do?
Well, first and foremost, I think we forget the impact and the influence the teacher has on the kids. And I have sat in a jury where the jury had said something about the style of a particular dancer. Yes. And after the competition, I would speak to the teacher and say, well, the jury was saying this about the style of the solo. And the teacher would say, oh, but what do they know? And therein lies the biggest challenge, because the teacher didn't want to know better. So step one is to have a teacher who understands ballet much better than often they do. So that's the first thing. And then to be willing to be able to take thoughts and corrections and suggestions, because you're 100% correct. So often a dancer walks on stage and they are just not ready yet for what they are dancing. They are not being kind to themselves, and often they are not being kind to the jury, because the jury has to sit through all of that. And they forget that by the fourth or the fifth time you see something that you just think is so ridiculous, you are just scoring them lower and lower and lower. So choose wisely, choose what suits you. Don't use the competition necessarily as a challenge to improve yourself as much as you should. I'm contradicting myself as I'm speaking, because what I mean by that is, yes, you should push yourself harder and harder to a next level, but that level, that line, should be guided by the teacher that is coaching you. There comes a point where you have to say, I'm not going to jump that, or I'm not going to turn that, or I'm not going to do that, because I am not ready for that. I am not ready to tell this particular story at this moment. So let me be kind to myself. Let me not try and do Swan Lake Act 3 when I don't even understand what the ballet is about. So, you know, and we see this in South Africa all the time. We have parents, we have teachers that keep on saying, yes, but it's such a simple solo, we need to do something more difficult because the kid is going to leave the school. Well, it's your job as a teacher to understand that the child is not ready for that particular solo. So take charge and find the right advice. You know, musicality is so important. Storytelling is so important. And that's something that people often say, you know, going right back to your first question, whether competitions are beneficial, because for so many years, people saw competitions as showcases for rhythmic gymnastics and athletics and things like that, and forgetting the value of storytelling, the value of the art.
Yes.
And that is so important. So choose from the moment go the appropriate solo. Number two for me is important, show versatility. Don't choose two solos if you get to dance two solos that look exactly the same. What's the point? The jury will remember it. They will be so impressed if somebody understands that they are doing a different style and that they get the different style, because that's very, very important. And I think those are very important things for me. Then also costuming. If you're going to be doing the peasant variation from Giselle, you cannot come onto stage with a costume that is full of glitter and shiny rhinestones and sparkly everything, because you're a peasant. You have to be able to portray the role that you are trying to portray. And so those are things that are very, very important. The moment you walk on, your costume, as much as it's not supposed to make a big impact on the jury, it does if it's completely wrong.
It does.
It really does. If it's badly cut, if it's too long or too short, or it doesn't suit the style of the ballet, immediately you get penalized without, it's not like somebody goes and says, I take 20% off. No. But in the back of your head as a juror, it's there. And then you start being more nitpicking. You shouldn't be, but you are. And you can say whatever you want.
Already set.
Exactly.
Because the mood is already.
Exactly.
The
other thing is the choice of your music. That's the last one I want to talk. Is a child walks on stage and they play their variations music, and it's completely a horrifically recorded piece of music, and they made it faster to suit them and they made it slower to suit them. Do you think that the jury isn't aware of that? So bear that in mind when you cut. Of course, people fiddle with the tempi, but do it sensibly and do it well, and do it still within the music. You can't literally do something so completely different that it makes no sense. So those are the things I think that are very important.
I agree with everything, and I want to elaborate a little bit on the teacher's level. So we often get into a situation where students come to us, or often happens in that competition situation, the parents say, you know what, I like to have my child to go to a competition. Would you coach her? No, she has already something prepared. So this is where I believe teachers have to be very serious and behave and act as a coach, a teacher, because there's a big difference, I do believe, that between a child's favorite variation done by her favorite ballerina, that's something that she always want to do, that between the readiness of that student, the appropriateness. So the repertory choice there, and it has to be made through thoughtful discussion and evaluation. You might need to try a few things before you settle on one variation. But one thing I do know that it cannot be the child's favorite variation, because we have seen it. A 12-year-old cannot be doing Giselle. I mean, it just doesn't work. So that's, in that sense, the coach has to play a much bigger and more important role, the teachers. And I believe that nowadays, although we can take total advantage of technology and the YouTube and all that social media site, you can find every variation possible, but you teachers have to massage into a version that is tailor fit into the student. It's your job. You cannot be, here is somebody's variation. No, that's them. These people have been coached by their teachers for many years, come up their own version. That is not a one-size-fits-all situation. So for us as teachers, I often see teachers in Cuba Academy where one little passage, one little transition, they will scrutinize it, and then they just go back and forth and back and forth. And me, sometimes, you know me, I'm like, just do it. But they would just do it, and that's beauty of all teachers, because that's how the background, just like you talked about, the culture, that's how the only thing we know how to do it. So can you just elaborate a little bit, because I know we have a lot of teachers are watching, and can you elaborate a little bit how, just like what you just said, and I think it's important for everybody to understand that.
Yeah, so I completely what you're saying, and if you adapt the solo, and I always say to people, no director in any company is going to make the ballet look worse by allowing their dancer to look silly, by not being able to do something. So solos have been adapted and changed for so many years ongoingly. They would change the side of the pirouette, some turn right, some turn left, and if you can change it. But keep it in the style of the ballet. So don't suddenly in a romantic ballet become super classical. No, you need to stay in the style of what it was originally created. Beyond that, for sure, make your dancer look as good, as secure, as comfortable as happy as they can be, because that's what it's about. Because in the end, it's the same as the musicality. When you watch from the front and you are, as a jury member, enjoying what you are seeing in front of you, you are less critical. The moment something starts jarring, you start asking questions, you start wondering, you start doubt what's going on. And that's what you don't want. So you want the child to come on and just done something that has flowed and read so beautifully and so cleanly that it just works. And then I can tell you, they will forgive you as jury members quite a number of things. So remember that, put that in the back of your head always, because no jury member wants to disqualify or take marks off. Because again, what I said right in the beginning, we are all in the same game. We are all wanting to make ballet better and stronger and more beautiful for everybody. So when a child has put in so many hours with a teacher, you don't want to give the child a bad mark unless something is so jarringly horrible and unlikely to be enjoyed. That becomes problematic. So that is really what I think people need to always bear in mind.
I agree with you, and I believe the competition, yes, it's a place to showcase your talent, showcase your ability, especially your technical strong dancer. But I don't believe competition is a place to take chances and to take the risks that beyond you. So I always, very well in my training in China, the students, literally, if I talk to my teacher these days, and sometimes I talk, still go back, refreshing literally my roots, where I'm coming from. For them to make a mistake, it's not possible for them to make a mistake on stage, because it's become a mechanical. Their body is mechanical. So once I asked one of a classmate of mine, and I was like, competition is so uncertain. You just don't know what the kid is gonna do. And then he's my classmate, but we've been apart for many years. But he still stayed in that driven form. He said, "Mistake. That's not possible.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen." Their body, it's so conditioned in the way that they just do it. It's just mechanical. So whether you talk about artistry or not, guess what? They have artistry as well. So they said what he shared with me, and I remember this is what really the school still followed that tradition. I mean, he said if you do the variation, boy and girls, their gauge is do 3 times, literally. 1 time, you about have 20 seconds, 15 seconds to catch your breath. Do it again. Another 15 seconds, 20 seconds to catch your breath. Do it 3 times. Their goal is 3 times identical. Yeah. Then they feel it's ready. Then they feel, okay, I can do 1 time good on stage. So I feel like there is once you decide on a version, I often see this, people start to change. Okay, before you narrow down to a version, you go through this evaluation period between you and your dancers and your students. You create everything. But there is a moment where, okay, this is it. This is what we do. This is the version we're going to work on. Once that decision is made, please don't change every day. One day it didn't work, don't change it. Continue that path, because it takes time. Don't get discouraged just because you're having 1 or 2 bad days. Because oftentimes the 3rd day is fabulous. But if you change it the 2nd day, the 3rd day, the fabulous day will never have a chance. So consistency is so important for me. So because I often see, I was a jury member for YGP just recently before lockdown. And I often see students doing stuff way beyond. It's too much, it's too difficult. So you can't take that chance. If you do 3 times that revision, you failed 2 times, you only succeeded 1 time, guess what? That's a wrong step for you, in my opinion.
And often the jury, is much more kind than often thought of. So the jury will not, if you slip, and it's truly a slip, It's not because you were trying to do 24 pirouettes in the music for 3.
Yeah,
They will be forgiving.
They can tell you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of kids literally want to die when something like that goes wrong. And they have to bear in mind that the jury is really not trying to penalize or punish them. The jury is there to indeed look for talent, look how to encourage the talent, and how to make it better. So that really is the function of the jury.
That's right. I agree. And if somebody knows how to do turns, sometimes it's irritation to me. Literally, I mean, beautiful turns, beautiful. But if you do 2 turns, one here, one here, you cannot save energy just to walk from here to there. Cutting all this beautiful opportunity, beautiful nuances, because you want to save energy, you just walk from here to there, 4 steps and 5th position, tendu again, do another turn. It literally irritates me. And that is ballet has never done that way, and it should never be done that way.
It's getting dark in South Africa, so we had to turn the lights on.
Okay.
So
So there's an honest mistake the jury member can see it, but the mistake coming from just carelessness or somewhat disrespectful to the original choreography, what the choreography is intended, and some of that specific passages, specific port de bras are there for specific reason, and most likely those jury member who has done those ballets before and they look for it. So if you did not do those specific things that are designed for that variation, all you care about is those turns, and that is going to irritate the jury members, and the score is not going to go well. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So for instance, also in some of the competition in South Africa in particular, I remember dancers that have done a solo and have scored exceptionally high in the one solo and then less so in the other. And then comes the time that they have to choose what they're going to do in the next round. And you can't guide them as a jury member. And you wish you could put a little sign on your forehead to say, no, not that one, take the other one. So again, it's so difficult sometimes, because in these competitions, once you get to the semifinals and finals, the difference in mark between the dancers are so truly minute. It's really, and then the smallest little thing, an off decision as to what it is that you wanted to dance, etc., makes a big difference. So then it becomes more and more a game as to, like a chess game, which solo should I use, what is going to make me look best. And again, the question always is, what is going to make me look the best that I could possibly be? That is really the basic question you have to ask. When parents ask me, so what solo should I do? Trust that you want to look the best possibly you could on that stage. That's what we want to see as jury members. Yeah,
absolutely. And the diversity in repertory, you choose 2 classical, you talk about there has to be 2 different style to show you, because the jury member appreciates that approach to see the range of you. And with that, another advantage comes with that, I believe, is your look, because oftentimes they come from different costume. So please don't choose, my opinion, to choose 2 variation, both requires romantic tutu, unless you have something to hide. So as a jury member, I often is like, did she have something to hide? What exactly. Try hiding? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I really appreciate if one variation have a longer romantic tutu, second variation you come out with a classical tutu. So it's just so refreshing to see you. So that diversity in programming, in repertory choices, that benefit comes well as well, because we do want to see the other side of you to see what that look like. That is.
But in line with that, Runshao, is the fact or the reality that very few people in their first competition does exceptionally well. very few. It's you become competition ready and competition fit, and oftentimes it's the teacher that becomes more aware of what the jury is looking for, more aware of how to prepare better, because that is just how it works. It's like anything in the world. You can't go and run a 42-kilometer race, a marathon, without having prepared and gotten fit. So you have to become the same competition fit. You know, you need to understand the games that happen backstage. Oftentimes, things that I never knew of. I seriously never knew of. I ran a competition. I still run the competition, and then I'm sometimes amazed at the games that some people can play, and I think, you know, we can pretend, oh no, everything is perfect. It's not always perfect, and so it's interesting how some kids are better to deal with it than others, and I think it's important that you prepare your student for something like that. You're not scaring them. You are not getting them to play the games themselves. You are only saying, be strong, be secure, and that's it.
I mean, you are going to be, sometimes I see teachers are far more nervous than the students, and often that is the case. I'm literally trembling in the audience, literally trembling. I can't even watch it. I can't even look. QF Academy went to New York, the regional. We did exceptionally well, but it was a horrendous experience for me in terms of nerve.
Yeah.
Just because I know how much energy and time all teachers have put it into, and I know how much the students have worked on that, and you just don't want them to get hurt. But at the same time, we as a teachers, we have to be so strong. We have to be the person where when the students are nervous, they look at us, they see confidence, they see comfort, they see security, they see love and care, and just this presence. So at that moment, honestly, there's nothing else you can coach them at the, let's say, half an hour place, the call. There's nothing you can do giving them. All you do is just stand there and love them. And I think, and you cannot show your fear. If you show your fear, they crumble.
It's gone.
It's
gone. Exactly. You can go home.
If you go like this and they lost. So
Absolutely.
it's that's the experience of what you just talked about. The teachers have to be educated and understand what they got themselves into as well. So that takes not just the first time. The second time, you're much more experienced. Okay, I got it. This dancer is not going to absorb any more correction at the half an hour. It's just not going to happen. And what costume really worked or what didn't. All that information. So there was a couple, last week, there was one question came up and saying that, is it necessary for teachers to participate in competition? My answer is it's not necessary, but if you are going to work with the students, have the desire and capability to go to the competition, then you need to get yourself educated to be a coach. It's very different. A teacher and a coach, it's a whole preparation prospect of it. And then at the actual site, how do you take care of your students during the competition?
Absolutely.
So that whole week, that resting, the costuming and the diet, and how do you take care of them in that whole week so they can be the best they can be. And
understanding that each student is different from the other. So if this worked for that student, it isn't necessarily going to work for this student. For some students, they want to hear and they want to do every day the class and 10 times the variation, and they get their security from that. So you have to be able to then understand that's necessary. For the other student, it's not going to work like that. And then you have to be able to understand the need of the different students. You have to do what a teacher has to do, first and foremost. Yes, you have to train them, you have to coach them, you have to prepare them. But you also have to understand that all the students are not 100% the same. You as a teacher might have this personality, but it's not necessarily going to be the same for your students. And you need to be able, it's like I always say, when a parent tells me they treat their 3 children exactly the same, it's probably not a good parent, because our children have different needs. You might need the blue shirt today and I want the green shirt tomorrow. Because you getting the blue shirt today doesn't mean I should get the blue shirt today. And that difference in personality, that difference in style, all of those kind of things are things that you as a teacher need to know before you arrive at your competition venue. Right. You need to be able to make your child feel comfortable. That's the first and foremost. And loved. You said it just now. Love. They mustn't feel that the world is going to come to end if they don't do well. Of course it's going to come to end because it's bad for your studio or something. And I think that's something that the kids don't always understand, is that they are representing, like I said in the beginning, they are the ambassador of their studio. So if they do well, the teacher feels good. And they need to understand, I'm not talking about your young kids, but the moment they are able to grasp that there is more to it than actually just what happens again on the stage, and therefore the teacher also wants to do well, because the teacher has also put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of love and a lot of guidance and a lot of, and all of those things definitely play a role as well.
Yes. And I also want to mention, in this setting, compared to school like China, the school, in the 2018, I was teaching master classes in my own school. They had a studio on the other side of the hall. Was the students are preparing for the same competition. They were going on that night or the next day. Each student, at least they have 2 teachers just there with them, 24/7, just there with them. It's not just to coach them, it's just there for them. They have their special lunch brought up from the cafeteria. They don't even have to go down there, brought up to their studio, just there for them. They have a costume lady there with all the costume, constant fix, see how this look, how that look.
Yeah.
Something pain, nurses just a call away, come down from upstairs. Yeah. It's the entire team. I'm talking about this support. It's unbelievable, this team. Of course, that adds pressure on the child to do well, because if the child doesn't do all the support. So then in the situation, in the vast majority of the dance schools does not have that kind of state support, okay?
Yeah.
I think in that case, the parents are playing a very big role. And I think the parents can play a very positive role in working with the teachers in the school. Also, sometimes, pardon me for saying that, because I know we have some parents are watching the show. You cannot be an obstacle in the process, because one thing that you have to know, you are not go to the competition. Your child is. You are not. Sometimes our parents cannot, or subconsciously unable to differentiate that. So they truly feel they are on the judgment. They are not. They are the support system.
Yeah, you have to set the boundaries very, very clear from the very beginning. And everybody needs to understand that they are on the same team. And I think your example of how it's done in China is exactly how the parents need to be made to understand that they are fulfilling a function in that place. They have to abdicate their role as a parent for the time that the competition happens in the preparation period. So if they are supposed to do A, B, C, D, they have to do A, B, C, D, and that's it. When the child comes home tonight, you become the parent again and you feed and love and care for them. But if you're part of the team, you have to play with the team. And as I say, those boundaries have to be super clear from day one. If it's not accepted at any given time, like in any team, if the nurse didn't arrive in time to take care of the Chinese kid, the nurse will be fired. So in the same way, if the parent isn't doing A, B, and C like they were supposed to do, fire them as members of your team, because they will become an obstacle. So that has to be very, very, very clear. So clear, because it becomes problematic if you haven't set those boundaries from the beginning. And I have seen it in so many competitions, my own competition, into other competitions over there. I see teachers and parents shouting at one another, not speaking to one another in the end. And who gets caught in the middle? The poor child that has to get on stage and actually perform and do well. And they forget what it's about. They forget that it's actually about the child taking part.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And so all of those things and all of those other things become important, but it's not supposed to be.
What are you, Mr. Dirk? So I was supposed to be scheduled to go to Cape Town, which is the city that I am absolutely, I think it's one of the top 3 destinations that I want to go. Supposed to be just completely gorgeous, beautiful place. And I was supposed to go in July. Can you tell us a little bit about, of course, we don't know, including Kirafi's own summer intensive. I am still planning to having a bit of word of mercy of local state guidelines. But we're completely ready to go. Scenario A, scenario B, scenario 3. We're completely ready for it, all sorts of scenarios. So tell us, so for the audience members, and South African International Ballet Competition is supposed to happen in July of this summer. So in light of COVID, can you share a little bit about us, at least what you got?
Well, the moment we started, because in South Africa, we're still in a very heavy lockdown. We are only allowed to go get food, work as an essential worker or a financial services worker, and go to doctors. That's basically what we are allowed to do. So I had said the moment we started talking COVID-19, I had taken a decision that I won't make a decision until the end of May before I say we are postponing, we are canceling, we are whatever we are doing. The reason for that is we have to look at all the scenarios, exactly as you had spoken. We have to look at, as I said in the beginning, some schools are already starting to go back into studios, so they will be able to rehearse. Some schools are not. So I am looking at the end of May, and then I will be announcing exactly what we would do. Maybe we will change the format of the competition. Maybe we will make it into a coaching competition. Maybe some true miracle happens and suddenly everything opens, which is highly unlikely, sadly to say. So I am looking definitely at different options, and I'm talking to different people. We are looking at the theater. We are looking within the city and province from their support to see what will be allowed. How will we be able to do certain things if we do them? And then we will engage with our teachers and our jurors, because we had such a beautiful teaching faculty and jurors that we have lined up. Beautiful, absolutely magnificent. So I don't just want to say, okay, it's over, let's do 2021.
No,
because what are the repercussions? What is the theater available in 2021? What other competitions are happening at the same time? So we need to be realistic. We need to be sensitive. We need to be caring. We need to understand where the different competitors are at in their own mental space. And so my little motto has been relax, reflect, renew, and do all of this respectfully. So respectfully, by the end of May, I'm hoping to have some kind of an announcement. And also, I don't want to make an announcement and then change the announcement. So by then, I will take a decision with a group of people that we will be engaging with, and we will take it from there. It's such a sad time. It really, really is. People have been working so hard right around the world. You know, I had a call from Sweden, said, "Oh, we're ready to come." We had emails from Croatia, from China, from Korea. They were all preparing, getting ready. The South African kids were working so hard already, and then this happened. So yeah, and you know, we have to be realistic as well. You know, there's Some battles you can fight, and there are some that you just have to say, let's move on and let's see what is the best alternative.
Right.
So that's where we are at.
Right. We are too. We're reluctant to make a decision. Then we have to change it later on. I mean, I always believe these kind of things. It happens. It happened before. It will happen again. And I talked about yesterday. One famous person have said before: don't ever let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly.
And you know, so the fact it opened doors. One door shut, it opened doors to other opportunities. So now we are learning this beautiful thing called distance learning. And I believe this distance learning, the virtual learning method way are going to stay after the pandemic. So, and I think I'm exploring in the way that there's multi-dimensional educational system starting this summer intensive. Either we have in person or online, but not just, it has to be dimensional, it has to be nicely professionally put together, and make sure it's safe, make sure that everybody can benefit, and make sure that it is conducted in a way that is respectful. Just like you said, it's very important. Be respectful. And I am, to say the least, hoping that things can quickly go back to normal, but I don't believe we can ever be a normal, the type of, I think there's evolution, a part of it, the evolution. We come out of one crisis, we don't really go back to the pre-crisis mode. We became something else. That's evolution. That's the word to me. It's constantly evolving. And dance industry are doing really fantastic in terms of how are we going to evolve. Literally, I see new ideas come every week in terms of how people are conducting themselves, how people are making themselves afloat, and how people are making absolutely the best out of take advantage of the situation. So I am certainly, my love to everybody in South Africa. I have really beautiful feelings for many of the teachers and students I have kept in contact with ever since last year. We met teachers and students, and I certainly really hope that we'll come out of this and a stronger footing, that in terms of awareness, in terms of how we conduct ourselves, in terms of what we learn, the most important from this, and take advantage from those lessons moving forward. So with that, Mr. Dirk, would you like to give us last few words without taking up so much more of your time to all audience members? Something wisdom, something that inspiring.
I don't have wisdom. I just have the absolute love for ballet. I believe that we all have to work together, as I kept on saying. We have to support where we can. We have to grow where we can. And we have to be thankful. I always say to the kids, thank your parents and your teachers, because without those, you wouldn't be able to be receiving the training and be in the position that you are in. Never forget that. Never forget where you come from, but have a very, very clear vision of where you want to go to. Know what it is that you want to achieve. Know what it is that you can and cannot do, so that you can work on that and you can fix that. But I also want to thank you, Mr. Du, for everything that you have been doing. All of these things, your classes, I don't know how you're still standing, because you do these classes all the time. You have all the meetings, you have the responsibilities that you have. You have an amazing team that work with you, of course, and most of us do. But in the end, it takes a person with a vision that needs to be able to run everything. And that's what I'm saying. So the same vision that you have for the school, the students have to have for their careers, they have to have a path and a plan. And I think that's important. The teachers need to understand also what it is that the child wants. So often a mom brings a boy or a girl to ballet class because the mom wanted to do ballet. And then the boy or the girl becomes a dancer. And at some stage, some of them actually realize that really they want to be dancers, and that's great. But some of them didn't want to be dancers, and I know I've worked very closely with a lot of dancers from the National Ballet School of Cuba, and in Cuba, being chosen to enter the school was always a huge honor, and it was a situation of getting access to opportunities that you wouldn't have had before. And then so often they would train these young men to become dancers, great dancers. And then when they finish school and they've been in a company for a while, some of them say, I've had enough, and they stop. And in that time that they stop, and this is very important, in that time that they stop, they realize that yes, they wanted to be a ballet dancer and they're happy to be a ballet dancer, or no, they are happy to become a soccer player or a businessman. And we have to be respectful and kind to that kind of decision. So there is so much time that is invested in training ballet dancers. And we need to be very, very mindful that we allow the space to continue or not. And I think that's important. And then regarding the COVID thing, I also want to just say a few words with that. And I think that's important that we give ourselves the opportunity to take care of ourselves first and foremost, as the parent or the teacher or the director, because we've been running around taking care of our staff and our families and everything. So allow yourself time to mourn. Allow yourself time to understand that you have to deal with the loss. Suddenly you're not seeing the students. You might have a loss of income. You might have a loss of connection to people. You might have been spending a lot of time. You've been preparing for your intensive. I've been preparing for the competition. Many directors have spent years on creating the seasons that were supposed to happen. And now suddenly we have to change. But all of that takes a toll, an emotional toll on us. And we need to allow ourselves to deal with that, and not just to steamroll through it and say, oh, it's okay, we get over it. No. At some stage, if you don't deal with it now, it will find a way, because it will be
Later
festering
on.
And it will find a way to explode another time. Try and deal with it as quickly as possible, and love yourself and love everybody in the world of ballet, please. Those are my words of wisdom.
How beautiful. How beautiful. Well, with that, Mr. Dirk, I wanted to say thank you so much. It's absolutely remarkable conversation, like all this conversation we had last year. And thank you for your encouragement and support of me personally. And let's work together and move forward. And I wish the day that I go back to South Africa to see all the beautiful
very
students
soon
and teachers.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and I'm proud of everything you do.
Thank you so much,
Mr. Dirk,
Many
if you don't
thanks.
mind,
Thank you.
we actually have two questions that the audience would like to ask you. Is that okay? Or Mr.
Is that
Dirk?
okay?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So one question is, globally speaking, what other competitions do the students have to participate, in your opinion?
Recommendations.
There are lots. There are so many. There are the ones in South Africa. There's the two in China. Every alternate year, there's the Shanghai or the Beijing one. There's one in Korea. There's actually more than one in Korea. There's the Varna. So those are very, very important competitions. And I think it's, and then of course, I love the YAGP. Some people hate it, some people love it. I absolutely love the YAGP because it's become one of the best places to find opportunities for bursaries to some of the best schools. And of course, every competition has its achieve a really great outcome. There's the Valentina Kosleva competition. There are beautiful competitions in Russia. There's the Grigorovich one in Sochi. There's one in Perm. So there's a whole bouquet of competitions to choose from. Choose them well. Choose them so that they can build on one another, so that you could use some of the same solos. So it's not always learning something new, but you actually create something that will stand you in good stead when you end up in a professional ballet company. Make sure that you gain from them. So there are really, really so many options around the world. And I would encourage a proper study before you just rush into the competitions.
Awesome. And then last question, sir, would be how intense should the preparation for competition should be in order to not to put too much intensity into dancers training? Like the it, will does that make sense to you?
Yes.
The balance.
So I think that we can learn from the big Olympic Games or big sports teams that you have to understand that you have to build up to a curve and then you have to get a little bit of a down and then up to the next one and then a down. You can't be at the peak for 9 or 10 months of a year. It's impossible. That's when we get injury prone. That's when we get burnt out. That's when we stop loving what we are doing, and we can never stop loving what we are doing. So really set a proper plan in the beginning of the year and stick to it. Really, really, really stick to it. If you're on the stock exchange, there are rules that you stick to. You know that when the stock price reaches a certain price, you sell, and when it gets to another price, a lower price, that's when you buy. Stick to those, because those are well thought through and well tested formulae. And if you stick to those, it will be good for you as a teacher, you as a dancer, and it will make the life easier for parents and the funding. Because if you know these are the goals that you are working, you have to fundraise for those, you have to work towards those, it's easier. Don't quickly come up with, oh, here's another competition, here's another competition. And then in the end, it becomes like a cat chasing its own tail, or a dog chasing its own tail. It's becoming just not becoming productive.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Dirk. Thank you for reminding us why we perform, teach, and learn ballet in a bigger perspective, as well as like the more really practical things that the teachers students can take for the competitions. They really appreciate it. All the platforms are being very grateful to you with all your advices. Okay.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Dirk. Thank you very much. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Indeed. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
With that will conclude. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy your day. Please let us know if you have any further questions, and I hope you enjoy your day. Thank you.